For those of you just joining our channel, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Mary, and everybody else. Now, my name's Les, and I'm going to show you about putting on some airbrush onto a scratch board. Now, I deliberately screwed up some areas on this board, just to show you how versatile you can get, how close detail you can get, and how to repair some obvious defects that you accidentally made, or may make unintentionally. Now, the areas that are obviously over-scratched are the areas of the frame, the tip of his nose and his cheek here. Everything else is just a rough basis. I've chosen low pitcher with permission, and the fellow has a very heavy texture on his face, so obviously I would require quite a few scratching sessions to get the same amount of texture on his face as in the picture. Problem with an airbrush is it's very smooth, so if you're drawing children or women that are very fair, it's fantastic. If you're drawing older people, not so good, because it's too smooth. So you have to artificially add the texture. The purpose of the Scratchboard is to add texture. It's remarkably good for doing that. So even his beard, for instance, is just lightly laid in, and I'll show you how to apply some of the paint and or ink over top of it as well. So we're going to start up here. I'll start with the over-scratched areas, and we're just going to gradually tone it down. And as I tell people, I say you're not going to really see the paint coming out, you're just going to see what's going to happen on the board. So rather than watching what I'm doing, pay closer attention to there, and you'll just see it gradually change color. So I'm going to start it here, and I'm going to start to tone that down. And that should be a very, very dark color by the time it's finished. So you're just going to see the color start changing really quickly. And I've been laying a lot of very, very thin paint. I didn't want to be switching paints halfway through the demonstration. So
is it actually ink or is it paint?
This is an actual acrylic paint. You can use ink, you can use dyes, you can use almost anything that you can spray. But this here is actual paint, and the reason I chose that is I know the consistency of it, and I don't have a supply for ampersand where I'm at, so immediately after this demonstration, I'm going to nice. But you can use almost anything. You'll see the values changing very quickly. And while some of the texture is still going to show if you get it close to it, the whole purpose is leaving the texture behind the black because you want to keep it as a unifying portion of the Scratchboard as opposed to people just thinking it's just a photograph. So now that I've knocked that back a little bit, pay a little more attention. Now, as I get closer to the board, I'm going to pick up more and more detail. It doesn't allow the paint to spread out as far.
How much pressure are you working with?
Right now I'm running around 30 psi. You can change that according to the size of your needle and the type of paint that you're using. If you're using a higher viscosity paint, you're going to need more pressure to push it out.
And you said you diluted that paint when you diluted it with water?
Severely diluted, yes. I've actually diluted this with paint with water and isopropyl alcohol. Because it's an acrylic paint, the acrylic paint has binders to it. The isopropyl alcohol helps to release those a little bit, so they're not quite as fast to gum off the airbrush. It'll stay liquid a lot longer. And it still dries very, very quickly. Okay, so just to quickly reiterate here, this area here on the glasses, I'm going to change that really quick while the portion dries a little bit. You can see that changing. It's not supposed to be a stark white, it's just supposed to be an off reflection. I'm going to bounce around from area to area to area and try to cover as much as possible.
How many layers does the video take?
Layers? I tend to work thin rather than thick. If I was working very thick, I could cover that in 1 or 2 passes.
Working thick meaning?
Working thin means the paint is very, very diluted.
Okay, so how is diluted, is that right?
I'll use more and more passes to cover the same portion. The advantage to that is it's transparent. I can see what's below it, and I can gradually build it up.
Okay.
Right? So it's a little bit more forgiving. Right? So the darker area on this cheek. And like I said, this is just a base scratch area. There's supposed to be a lot of texture with the cracks, wrinkles of the fellow's cheeks as well. Now this area here is supposed to have a shadow for his glasses. Start to drop that in. pushing back the blacks a little bit more. Darkening everything up, and it really gives you a lot of nice contrast really quickly. The advantage to working the way I do is if you want to darken the dark area that's right next to the white area, you want to darken the darkest area first and let any overspray, if there's any, naturally carry over and darken the white area for you. So you kind of get two spots at once. Because if I went back and darkened the white area on top of it, then I might go too dark. So I try to save the white area to the last. Now we'll just kind of tone down the nose a little bit so it doesn't look quite so harsh. Down his cheek. You can see these obviously over-scratched areas that you can actually tone down really quickly. It's a good way to salvage a possibly demolished